Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon back in Bucharest. This is actually my third trip to Bucharest this year, and it's always a pleasure to come back. So thank you for the invitation. I'd like to thank also the organizers, Chaluka, and everyone has been extremely deep in their planning on this, and it seems to be a big success. But it's I want to say a big thank you. I also want to put a little disclaimer in there. We're trying to get back on schedule. We're a little bit behind schedule. So my comments are going to be relatively brief to give the other speakers the time that they need. Also because I have a very hard stop at 2:30. I have another conference to do online that I'm running off to. So I am going to run out. Hopefully I'll pop my head in back later on. Let me say that on what my comments today, because we've had to abbreviate them some, and we're down to, it was a little bit shorter than we originally planned. I'm probably going to skip through a few of the slides at the end, but anyone who would like the slides, I would be happy to send them to you, okay? So please, I will provide the slides if you'd like them. But what I want to share with you today is just a few thoughts about service, and particularly, you know, one of the big challenges that Certion is facing today is trying to think about service and service quality, and particularly in branded residences. But let me make some broader observations. And as I say, in the short time today, I'm only really going to be able to share a few ideas with you. But let me just make a few broad comments about service quality, and where we are and where we need to go. You know, I think many of you probably feel like the captain of the ship. You know, we've been through so much over the last few years. There's so much going on in the markets today. No one really knows where we're going. Frankly, a lot of us kind of feel in some ways we're on a good path, that things, after what we've been through the last few years, that we're kind of picking up. But you know, when we talk about service, we're talking about people. And I had the opportunity to be here in April at the Top Hotel Investment Conference. And the topic of my presentation then was about what we're calling the Great Resignation. This idea that it is so hard to recruit and keep people today. And obviously, in the service industries, hospitality, tourism, and so forth, we're really talking about recruiting large numbers in this very labor-intensive industry. So as I travel around and talk with leaders and executives in the industry, the number one thing that they bring up again and again and again is this idea that where do I find the people I need? And we can see it, you know, that vacancies, and again, I'll provide these slides to you if you can't see all the details, but basically, job vacancies are going up in every country around the world. There are more and more vacancies available because we're coming out of the COVID of the last few years, but also because people, our employees, our teams are deciding they want to work differently. Part of it has been because of this virus, but not all of it. We've had a very hard time of the last few years in the hotel industry, in the restaurant industry, even airlines, big airlines like Alitalia have gone out of business. And you know, we're not done yet. If you look at where everyone seems to think we're out of the tunnel, we're not there yet. COVID in many countries is well above what it was last summer, and we're just going into the winter season. But you know, it's not just COVID and the virus. We have so many other issues that we're juggling right now. Inflation. You know, we went from deflation a year ago to record inflation today. We've got war, large-scale war, right next door here, east and west, for the first time, really, in a big scale since World War II. Energy prices are off the charts. If you look at what's going on, energy prices are out of sight. Natural gas, 10 times what it was last year. Even oil, 10 times what it was 2 years ago. And then we're dealing with climate change issues. You know, the climate is changing radically. This last summer, whether we're talking about floods in Pakistan, forest fires in France, or landslides in the US and Canada. There's been climate changes here. We have to bear some of the blame for this. We have not always been responsible in the way that we've promoted tourism. I think we're getting better, but we are certainly paying a certain price for it as well. Supply chain issues. We can't get the things we need. Okay, we've got these huge supply chain issues. Interest rates are off the charts. Here in Romania, among the highest in Europe, well above 6%. I don't know how developers are really surviving, are doing anything, moving ahead with this. The US dollar is at a record high. That can be good for tourism, but it also, remember, our energy prices are priced in dollars. That makes them more expensive. So there's some downsides of that. The equity markets have been falling. Most of the big equity markets are down 25% or more. We've got so many challenges that we're dealing with, that you're dealing with as leaders, as business leaders, and that you have to consider. So let's talk about what all of, in this context, what this means really for service. You know, the first question is, what is good service? Everyone has a different opinion, an idea of what's good service. And I'm going to argue that sometimes less service is better than more service. And at any rate, I like to think of two things when I think about what is good service, what really in the broadest sense defines good service. Number one is anticipating guest desires. Anticipation, that before they ask for it, before they need to request something, we've anticipated that and we're ready for them and we've given them that. And secondly, exceeding guest expectations. The guest expectations are here. Great service goes a step further and gives them more than they expect. So, you know, this professor, Theodore Levitt from Harvard Business School, who invented the word globalization, one of the greatest, maybe some people would say the greatest marketing professor that ever lived, he wrote a couple of very famous articles. And one of them is this one called Production Line Approach to Service. He wrote it about 50 years ago, 55 years ago. It's still very, very relevant today. And what he talks about in this is he says, listen, the big problem in service industries is the people. You know, think about manufacturing. You can do it. You have a great product. You produce it the exact same way every single time. Everyone is exactly the same, just the way you want it. In service industries, and certainly in hospitality, tourism, and lodging industries, we're a very different situation. Every guest that comes in gets a different level of service because we ask them different things. They have different needs. People are in different moods. What's the critical factor, the common denominator? People. You know, running hotels and tourism enterprises would be so easy if it wasn't for the people. Why do we have to have clients? Why do we have to have employees? Wouldn't it be easier without clients and employees? Unfortunately, we need that to make it work, okay? But people make things different each time. And that's our challenge, is to try to standardize it or take a production line approach to service. How can we define that great service experience and then make it the same? Every single guest, everyone who comes in gets the same experience. That's the challenge that we face. And I think this applies to hotels and branded residences, medical clinics, retirement houses. All of these places are looking for better service. And besides, you know, I know that today we're talking a little bit about branded residences, a lot of my experiences in hotels, but in these kinds of, there's great opportunities here for consumers who want a more upscale service here. And these are opportunities that are on the horizon. As the population ages and we're getting older, unfortunately, we all have other health needs. And so I think these are other areas that we should be looking at and when we talk about providing exceptional service. But guests are changing their expectations of service. They're changing their consumer behavior. You know, think about EasyJet. EasyJet, I had to take an EasyJet flight. I said had to because it was the only direct flight on the route I was flying. I was going from London to Split, Croatia. It was the only one who flies direct, so I had to take it. And, you know, it's okay. I'm not difficult to please. But there isn't a lot of service, okay? the price is right, but there's not a lot of service. And that's true of all of the low-cost carriers. But I have a good friend who is a general manager at the Sharm el-Sheikh Four Seasons Hotel. Four Seasons. Some people would say the greatest hotel company in the world. He's general manager. I've been to his hotel. It's an extraordinary hotel, extraordinary service. And he tells me that a good part of his clientele arrives on EasyJet. The same guest will take the plane from an EasyJet plane, arrive in Sharm el-Sheikh, and then wants extraordinary service, the best service in the world at the Four Seasons. So what I'm saying is that guests have different expectations. An hour before, when they were on their plane, their expectations of a certain service level was here. As soon as they arrive at the Four Seasons, and of course they're paying for that, their expectation is here. So we need to adjust our service to the expectations of the guests, but even if it's EasyJet, hopefully we can exceed that. What do guests want? They want what you promise them. They want what you promise them. And a number of hotel companies have gone into this, providing guarantees. A service guarantee. At Ibis, an Accor product, of course, at Ibis, they've had this for years. The 15-minute satisfaction contract. You check into your room, either there's no hot water, the television doesn't work, whatever, the phone doesn't work, something's wrong. They will change it in 15 minutes or your room is free. Free. Now, what they'll normally do is they'll put you in another room where those things are working. And if they don't have another room, well, the hotel's filled anyway, so they can afford to give you a free room. But the guest really doesn't want a free room. What they want is they want everything to work. And this is very reassuring. That's service. When you can guarantee a guest that they're going to get the service or it's free. They don't pay. It's that simple. Hampton Inns does the same thing. A Hilton concept does the same thing. 100% satisfaction or it's free. Again, it all comes down to people, and we have to think about those people we're hiring. And as I pointed out earlier, we're having a big problem recruiting, developing, and retaining our staff today. Huge problems. Workers are quitting at record rates. I did a whole presentation on this at Top Hotel in April, actually right here in this hotel, maybe in this room. But the fact is, many of them are quitting without other jobs because they're changing lifestyles. They want to work part-time. They want to work part-time for themselves and 2 days a week for someone else. They're changing the way that they work. In a recent study that McKinsey did, they found that 40%, now this is not just hospitality, this is all industries, but they found that 40% of workers said it was likely, somewhat likely, or very likely they were going to quit their job in the next 3 to 6 months. How are we going to provide that service when people are leaving the workforce? If you go to hospitality, it was even higher. 47% said they were thinking about quitting their jobs in the next 3 to 6 months. We've got our challenges when it comes to service because we're in a service industry and we're talking about people. Not only that, it's costing a lot more. This is how manufacturing, construction, retail, business services, education, how wages have gone up, salaries have gone up. Look at leisure and hospitality, by far more than any other industry, okay? And we're still suffering these problems. It's not just about compensation. It's also about lifestyles and work-life balance. I have a friend who manages the Great Savoy Hotel in London, one of the legendary hotels in the world. Told me that for his room attendants, now to provide just a minimum of service, he has to pay 30% more than before pre-COVID. 30%. And frankly, he probably should have been paying that before COVID because they were probably underpaid. But my point is this isn't going to be free. I don't have any easy answers for you. I don't have any gimmicks, checklists, any low-hanging fruit to just fix these things. These are the things in the service industries we've got to deal with. And particularly if we want to provide that upscale, 5-star, white glove service, it's going to be more and more challenging. You know, we talk about brands, okay, and branding. Brands are important. Brands, you know, for me, a brand is a promise. When you buy a certain brand, whether it's a hotel or a car or a type of clothes, you're buying a promise. That company has promised you a certain quality, a certain thing. So we've got to be very careful to protect our brands because brands can go downhill very, very quickly. But we have to think about being an employment brand. Not how does the guest see us, not how does the client see us. How do employees or potential employees see us? Why do they want to come to work for me? What kind of benefits does my company offer? Whether it's development, whether it's promotion, whether it's mobility, whether it's compensation, whether it's flexible time. But we've got to think of that as a benefit and associate it with our brand. And that's the way that we're going to be able to attract the best and the brightest. You know, one company, a very upscale company that I think does an excellent job of this is Ritz-Carlton, a Marriott brand, okay? But what does Ritz-Carlton say about it to its employees? We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. That's so powerful. It's not, in English, there's a difference between service and servitude. We're in the service industry. Servitude is not what we want to be offering. And this gives dignity to people. This gives dignity to employees, okay? We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. You know, we've done a good job of personalizing the guest experience. I think in the hotel industry, in the upscale hotel industry, it gets a little ridiculous sometimes. You know, I was in a hotel the other day where they had a pet concierge, okay? Yes, okay? They have pillow menus, you know. But we've come a long way in the hotel industry. What we haven't done a good job of is personalizing the employee experience. You know, we have to understand each of our employees as individuals. Not just design policies and benefits and procedures that apply to all of them, because each one of them is a different person. They have families, they have friends, they have hobbies, they have concerns, they have problems, they have pastimes. But when we design something and just say, oh, this is what we offer, we rob them of their personality. We take their personality away. And that's a lot of work to get to know each employee and understand them as a human being, as a person. But that's the way that you're going to build brand loyalty. That's the way that that person is going to want to work for you, is that if you take the time, understand them, and you can tailor what's important to them. Because it's very easy for me to assume that what motivates me motivates you. And it's probably false. Some of us are motivated by professional development, some by free time, some by money. But we're all motivated, and that means that each leader, whether it's at the top of the organization or a team member, no matter how far down, if you have people reporting to you, you need to understand those individuals as people and be able to meet their needs. And that's going to be the solution. You know, there was a study done, and this is another one of those McKinsey studies that found, and again, I'll provide these slides if you'd like them. But essentially what they did is they asked employers and they asked employees, what are the most important things that new workers or workers coming in or current workers want from, what are the benefits, the things that they are looking for? And this light blue up here, these are the things that employees said are really important to us. And there's things about being valued by their manager, a sense of belonging, valued by the organization, having caring and trusting teammates and so forth. And then there's things that employers thought were really important to the employees. And those are the things down here. But the employees, it really isn't important. And those are things like being poached by another company, ability to work remotely, development opportunities. What I'm saying, this is what's really important to employees. And managers just don't get it. This is what managers think is important to employees, and employees say, no, those things really aren't so important to us. The only place there's agreement is right along here. We've got to get in touch with our people. If we want to deliver 5-star service, we've got to be in touch with them. We've got to understand them as individuals. Why do people quit their jobs? Lack of career development and advancement, inadequate total compensation, uncaring and uninspiring leaders, lack of meaningful work. We need to understand why they're quitting us, because we're not going to be able to give that top-class service unless we understand what's important to the employee. These are not people, we can't just get rid of them, okay? We can't just employees are not disposable. We can't just, let me give you one final example because I've got to run to my next conference. And but this is a restaurant, a very upscale restaurant up in Switzerland. Very expensive. You probably pay, average check with wine and everything included is probably a couple €100 per person. So yeah, 5 people go there, you could spend 1,000 euros or 1,000 Swiss francs. It's about the same. Here. It's a restaurant called Gerberwies. It's in the town of Yverdon-les-Bains. Beautiful restaurant. And if you go to their website, they have the chefs who are also the owners and so forth, the maître d'hôtel, the sommelier there. Beautiful website, really well done. I think it's very well done. And you get that sense of quality there and so forth. And if you scroll down on this, on the employees, what you'll see is further down, there's an employee by the name of David Coronado. David Coronado. And David Coronado is the dishwasher. He's the dishwasher. Look at the way he's looking at that glass. This is a restaurant that gives dignity to their employees. I can tell you, he's not going anywhere. David is not quitting and going anywhere. He's going to be working there. Because here is a restaurant that respects him, understands him, and makes him part of the team. So what I'm saying is that, you know, back to Marriott, is that we are, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. And that dignity is really going to be critical in the future. With that, there was a number of other slides. As I said, I'd be happy to share them with anyone who would like them and engage with you if you have any questions or comments. But at this moment, I'm going to have to leave it to the other speakers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.